Guys, and welcome to my 8.1 Enhancement Shaman PvP guide. On this PvP guide we're going to be covering talents, traits, certain situations in which battlegrounds and arenas differ in what you're going to take in the build, rotation, and just overall kind of tips or thoughts I've had on enhancement over the last two expansions, or three expansions that I've kind of played it as my main. So going right into talents. In 8.1, Lightning Shield got nerfed a little bit. Pretty much made it so you no longer generate Maelstrom from Lightning Shield. So that's kind of shitty. Hot Hand, it's okay. I don't think it procs nearly as much as it used to in Legion when it was really good. So I don't take it that much anymore. However, if they do ever change that kind of proc chance, possibly doubling it of what it is now, which is also, by the way, an unknown rate, because they don't like telling you the proc rate of certain things now, and like leaving the tooltips as unobvious as general. But Boulder Fist is the thing you take all the time, especially with this build. This build's talking about traits, which is Strength of Earth. Rockbiter causes your next melee ability other than Rockbiter to deal an additional X amount of nature damage. So that stacks really well with that trait. And it increases the damage. So that's something. Landslide is the level 30 row that you're going to take. Rockbiter has a 40% chance to increase the damage of your next Storm Strike. Storm Strike is pretty much your main ability. So that's a no-brainer. Other than that, I don't take Totem Mastery all that much. I've taken it just for fun, but I don't think it really competes with these other two. Forceful Winds can be really good. When you have higher haste and a lot more item level, this can be really consistent DPS, but when you're kind of lower item level, you're going to be taking Landslide. For the 45 row, it comes down to, I guess, what you're doing. For Battleground, Static Charge can be really good for stunning a lot of people in a small area. With the reduced cooldown on that, for each enemy hit, it can be really, really good, especially in our RBGs. For arenas, most of the time you're going to be taking Spirit Wolf or Earth Shield. Spirit Wolf pretty much increases your movement speed by 20% and reduces the damage you take by 20%. Spirit Wolf can be paired with Azerite traits and honor talents such as Spectral Recovery, and I don't know what the Azerite trait's called, but it's the one that heals you in Ghost Wolf form. Somewhere around. That paired with Spirit Wolf, really good. And then Earth Shield, I don't ever think about how much healing Earth Shield really does. I just think it kind of adds a little layer of somewhat defensiveness to your just passive playstyle, so it's really good for questing. Like, I use this all the way to max level for questing, so if you're questing or doing world PvP or something like that, where you just don't have a healer, Earth Shield can be really good. For the 60 row, I want to say Overcharge has the possibility to be good. I haven't really tried it. We'll try it right now. I'm curious, just to see how hard it hits. So 9,000. That's not bad. That's about what it was before. So that might be worth taking, though. And then if it crits, it's hitting for 20,000. With cooldowns, it would probably be hitting for... Let's see. And this is just 20% damage increase. 22,000. So it could be worth taking, though. The only thing I don't like about it is the Maelstrom it uses. However, most of the time, if you have, again, a higher item level, you're going to be pretty high on Maelstrom most of the time. Other than that, Searing Assault's probably your go-to. Flame Tongue just does extra damage over time. Can be dispelled, however. Other than that, you have Hailstorm. Pretty bad. It did get buffed. It pretty much does the same thing as Flame Tongue, except it slows people, obviously from the normal Frostbrand passive, and now it does extra damage. However, it's going to be doing a little bit more than Flame Tongue, about 100 more. But if you just want to empower your normal auto attacks, then I guess that works. This is also used for... There's a trait somewhere that I know that if you do Frost, Fire, or Nature damage, it gives you a certain secondary buff. This would be a state, or a kind of talent you'd want to take if you want to proc the Frost one, which I do believe is Haste on that Azerite trait. But, I don't know for sure. For 75, Nature's Guardian is my go-to. Just heals me every 45 seconds for a lot of my health. Feral Lunge can also be good if you want a gap closer. Say you're going against a hunter or mage, someone who's just ranging you constantly. It can be really good. However, it should be noted that the range is really low, particularly because 25-yard range is 15 lower than most people's casting range is. Boomkins, I believe, have a 45-yard range, though. Windrush can be good. However, I don't think I've seen anyone take it. If people just don't run into it, they don't get the move speed, and it only lasts for 15 seconds. It can be good, but I've just never used it. Crash Storm, really more for mythics. You have to have the enemy stand still in this effect for it to actually do damage, so that's why most people don't take it. Most people are going to take Sundering. Pretty much does Flame Strike damage, which is a mixture between Flame and, I believe, Earth. Could be wrong. And also kind of interrupts them by knocking them in a certain direction. Yeah, it's really good. 40-second cooldown, hits people like a truck, and it's a button that just chunks people for about 10% of their health. Fury of Air did get buffed. Fury of Air I've taken in the past. Pretty much adds 400 DPS to your just normal kind of rotation. However, it does drain your Maelstrom constantly, which is the only kind of gripe about that. And this was good when we had very high Maelstrom generation in Legion. However, now, this can drain your Maelstrom to the point where you might be Maelstrom starved in certain situations, which is why I don't really take this that much. For the 100 row talent, this is the most adaptable talent row for Enhancement Shamans. Elemental Spirits reduces the cooldown of your Earth, Spirit, Wolves, whatever, by 30 seconds. Enhancing them with Fire, Frost, or Nature. Nature damage increases, I believe, your Wind Fury and Storm Strike critical damage by 35% for each wolf. So potential 70% damage increase on your Storm Strike and Wind Fury. Frost just gives you flat damage increase, and the Fire Wolf makes it so your Lava Lash does damage over time whenever you apply that Lava Lash ability. Just, you know, you hit them with Lava Lash, you got a dot, and then it just stacks forever if you spam that, so that's what that does. It can be fun, however, you're gonna have to base your rotation off of what wolves you have, and if they die, then they're dead, and your cooldowns is kinda gone. Ascendants, this is more so for arena, possibly high-ranged RBGs. Pretty much gives your Storm Striker range, reduces, I think you go through all of the armor, reduces the cooldown of Storm Strike by 66%, 30-yard range, 10 yards lower than most casters, but still a very far range for a melee. This can be very, very good against hunters, mages, warlocks, windwalkers, mistweavers, demon hunters, anyone who has a pretty long range or mobility to get away from you. This can be really good on. Most of the time for just either PvE, PvP, arenas, or battlegrounds, I think my favorite is Earthen Spike. It does 6,000 damage, increasing physical nature damage you deal to the target by 20% for 10 seconds. This is pretty much a 20% damage buff on a 10-second cooldown baked into your rotation, which does decent damage. It does about a little bit more damage than a Lava Lash, and only costs 20 Maelstrom. And this will pretty much increase all of your damage, because most of your damage is nature or physical damage. So that's why I take that. And that's the talents, guys. Just going back over these, just something, or what I think is kind of noteworthy. Forceful Winds can be good. I think these are competitive still. I don't like the RNG of this, even though it's pretty high. 40% is a really high proc chance, but Forceful Winds can be really good. Especially if you're spamming Crash Lightning. Hailstorm or Searing Assault. I'd probably have to test Overcharge. Sorry, I meant Searing Assault or Overcharge. I'm gonna have to test Overcharge a little bit more, just to see how much damage it does, and how consistent it can be. And it's really good for, again, those situations where you don't have melee range on someone, and they're just ranging you. You can cast this. It's a 40-yard range. It can hit upwards of 10,000. It has the possibility to finally kill that one person you've been chasing for a little bit, so that's one situation where that might be good. Fury of Air. This one's a love-hate relationship, because it drains you of Maelstrom, but it slows someone permanently and just adds extra DPS to rotation. So, again, that's just, like, up to personal preference, really. And now we can finally go into Honor Towns. Okay. Ethereal Form pretty much makes you immune to physical damage. However, it should be noted that this does not count towards spells, so any caster will just shit on you, because you're going to be very immobile, because it reduces your movement speed by 50%. And, however, it's good against melees. Say if you're going against Fury Warrior or something, or Fury Warrior Healer or something like that in 2v2, this is really, really good, because you can just be immune for 15 seconds, and your healer can heal you up while you're in that. Sky Fury increases your critical strike damage by 20%, which pretty much is a 20% damage increase whenever you do crit someone. Counter-Strike Totem pretty much reflects damage back to someone whenever they do damage on you, as long as they don't kill the totem first, which most people with a brain will do. So that, take it your own risk, I guess. Purifying Waters is pretty hot garbage. Spectral Recovery is like a little bit better. Purifying Waters and can be paired with Spirit Wolf and your Ghost Wolf trait in the healing ring of your Azerite armor to be a very potent heal over time. Grounding Totem can be very good against casters, say a mage who goes for a Glacial Spike, Destruction Warlock going for a Chaos Bolt, Balanced Druid going for a Star Surge. That general kind of hard-hitting spellcaster ability. Grounding Totem can be really good against that. Swelling Waves was really good in the past. It used to replicate your heal for 100% of the amount 3 seconds later. However, one expansion later, it is now down to 50%, so it's not as good as it used to be. However, it can be used still, and is still used. I've seen some people use it. I don't use it personally, though. Going on to the best 2 talents for Enhancement Shamans, which should just be baseline, except for Shamanism. Ride the Lightning. If there are 2 more enemies within 8 yards when you cast Storm Strike, you can also cast a Chain Lightning on the target, dealing 3020 nature damage. Otherwise, if there are no targets near you, you're gonna throw lightning bolts at people for the same amount of damage at 40 yards away. Yeah, that's that. It just adds extra damage. Shamanism, your Bloodlust has a 60-second cooldown, increases haste by 20%, which is, I think, 10% less than a normal Bloodlust on a 1-minute cooldown. It only affects yourself and one other target if you do cast it, though, down from the whole raid. So, something to keep in mind, however, really good in 2v2s or 3v3s. Bloodlusting you or your DPS pretty much gives you both a Bloodlust on a 1-minute cooldown. Surprised this hasn't been removed from the game yet. That's everything right there. Going on to traits. The only traits I really care about are this one. Strength of the Earth. As I said before, Rockbiter causes your next melee ability other than Rockbiter to deal an additional 1,373 damage. This can stack up to 3 times. I have 2 of them right now. And using one gets me about, let's see the damage. I guess I'll just use Storm Strike. 4,000 damage. So if I had 3 of those, I'd probably be hitting for about 5,000 every Rockbiter that I just hit a melee attack on. And you're going to be hitting a lot of melee attacks, so pretty much it's just a huge DPS increase in my opinion. For macros, you don't really have many. You can have a Focus Hex macro, which I have. You can have a Burst macro, which I have, which is pretty much Blood Fury. Whatever cooldowns you have in Bloodlust. And then if you want to cast your Bloodlust on a certain target in Arena, you want to put a bracket, target equals name of the target that you want to cast Bloodlust on, close the bracket, and then just space Bloodlust. And that will work as a Bloodlust macro. You'll be able to cast Bloodlust on a target, they'll get 20% haste, you'll get 20% haste, you're going to one-shot someone. Focus Shear and Focus Hex are like the only 2 other macros I have. In Arena, you usually want focus macros. I don't even have like a button to set someone as a focus target, which I should probably have, but I always just shift right-click, or right-click, set focus target or whatever. And I'll interrupt them, and I'll hex them with that. So those are the macros. And I guess we get into rotation now, because there's not much else to talk about. Yeah, let's get into that rotation. So, Enhancement Shaman. It is incredibly simple. You just stick on someone. And you use your Storm Strike whenever it comes up. You should always kind of track of your Maelstrom. You don't want to be capping out on it, but you don't want to have too little Maelstrom not to cast your Storm Strike. You want to be using your Rockbiter on cooldown pretty much, because it gives you that Maelstrom power. Whenever you get Storm Strike procs, you're just going to want to use those immediately. And again, since I have a Landslide proc here, I'm going to use cooldowns, because you do kind of want to line up your cooldowns like that. I'll wait for the next one, however, just to kind of prove a point. Your cooldowns are going to consist of, obviously, your Bloodlust, which won't incur a 10-second cooldown in this specific instance, because I'm not in a Battlegrounds. But it will give us slightly more haste, so that's something to keep in mind. And again, the base rotation pretty much is using Storm Strike whenever it's off cooldown. If you can't use Storm Strike, you're going to want to use your Lava Lash. If there are 2 targets near you, it should be noted that you do want to use your Crash Lightning, because your Crash Lightning will give you a slightly empowered Storm Strike or Lava Lash, depending on what ability you use, but pretty much it adds a nature damage to your Storm Strike or Lava Lash that will cleave people in front of you. I can't get it to proc since there are no 2 targets close enough for me to proc this ability. But however, if you use Crash Lightning when there are 2 targets available, you'll get a little buff here next to your Gathering Storms buff that will pretty much let you know that you're going to be doing extra damage with your Storm Strike. I don't know how long it lasts. It probably says here. Causing... doesn't say how long it lasts. Maybe 10 seconds. I don't know. Anyway, that's a thing. You should keep that in mind whenever you're trying to play Enhancement. And another thing when it comes to your basic rotation, and this kind of applies to just how often Earthen Spike is up. Earthen Spike is gonna only have a 10-second cooldown after, obviously, the debuff wears off of the target, which means I'm gonna say there's a 10-second downtime to Earthen Spike, which is something that should be taken into consideration whenever you are hitting someone, because it does have a slightly larger range than usual, and it lines up with your burst a lot. Your burst is just sundering in landslide procs. So I'll try to get a landslide proc here soon, and then show you kind of what the burst would be like. There it is. So I'm going to use Ghost Wolves, use cooldowns. And if I had Bloodlust, it would have procced, and then you just use this. You want to use your Sundering whenever they are casting to interrupt whatever cooldowns they're trying to use. Usually this is best used when the healers kind of use an immunity spell, which is usually something a healer has now. It's an ability that makes it so they're no longer interruptible. However, Sundering will still interrupt this because it's not counting as a interrupt, as in a counter spell or wind shear. It's counted as a physical movement of moving the character to the right or left, instead of just countering that certain spell school. So that should be noted. It works like any other stun, really. Like, if you stun someone that's trying to cast, they're probably going to get interrupted unless they're DR'd to shit. And again, here it should be taken that obviously Earthen Spike's back up almost in line with Sundering. And whenever you use Earthen Spike with Sundering, it's going to be doing Sundering a big favor and pretty much buffing that damage by 20%, because it does do flame/nature damage. And that's it. That's the rotation. You'll see the Bloodlust did not actually count as the raid Bloodlust, so I can Bloodlust again, use my cooldowns, and do a decent amount of damage here. Going over the Crash Lightning kind of scenario again. If there's 2 or more targets near you, and you've used your Storm Strike procs, and this is where you'd normally use a Crash or a Lava Lash proc, right? You don't have any Storm Strike procs, let me get rid of those. No Storm Strike procs, you have extra Maelstrom, there's 2 targets near you. What do? Do you Lava Lash, or do you Crash Lightning? You Crash Lightning because it's going to buff all of your damage for a little bit, and will cause you to cleave targets in front of you. And one of the better things about Enhancement in a Battlegrounds too is that a lot of your AoE damage is almost baked into your rotation, because when you are using your Crash Lightning, it will enhance your, as I've said like 10 times now, Storm Strike, Lava Lash to do extra damage. That's going to do extra damage to people in front of you. Your Sundering is going to be doing extra damage to people in front of you, even though it's only up every like 40 seconds, but it chunks people for about 10% of their health and interrupts them. Yeah, that's Enhance. Not too much. Something that should be noted is that if you stay in Ghost Wolf long enough, you do get a 20% damage reduction. 20% damage reduction mixed with your Astral Shift is a 60% damage reduction, which pretty much makes you immune to damage almost. Not really, but you're going to be taking almost no damage. It's like sitting in a Dispersion almost. And you're moving pretty fast like in a Dispersion as well. So that's something that should be noted. I don't think Earth Elemental does damage. Like, enough damage. It's kind of nice to throw out there just to, like, get people to panic. Oh yeah, look at that fat damage. It hits for about 300, so something. If you just want to, you know, taunt the target, just make them shit themselves, throw that out there. There's a Azurite trait that actually buffs your Earth Elemental. I don't know where it is, though. But I've seen it around. If you have that, you're probably going to want to use Earth Elemental a little bit more. That's kind of why I do have it on my bar, because I did have that taunt at one point. But anyway, another reminder. We have a 40-yard range on our stuns and Earthbinds now, so you can always just kind of Earthbind a group. And then, usually if you throw a Capacitor Totem right on top of your Earthbind, they don't have enough time to run out of the area of your Capacitor Totem. That's something to keep in mind. Earthwalk, Cleanse Spirit, you can remove curses, which can remove hexes, and I believe Curse of Weaknesses from Warlocks, any curses from Warlocks, and curses from other people as well. And, yeah, that's it. You can run fast. Your only defensives, like the only cons to Enhancement are, if someone's ranging you, you have to go in Ghost Wolf to reach them, which is why I take the Ghost Wolf taunt. And our healing isn't that great anymore. Our healing surge has gotten pretty nerfed, at least in PvP. I think it heals me for like 12,000, which is really nothing compared to other classes' heals, but that's the only downsides to it, I'd say. No mobility in some points, and kind of low self-heals, but our burst is crazy. Our crowd control is kind of crazy. Tremor Totem also adds another kind of immunity. Like, if you run Tremor and counting, If you run Tremor and Grounding Totem, you're going to be very annoying for any caster that you're trying to go against. And if you're Enhancement, you're going to be destroying casters anyway because of their very low armor. So, yeah, your build's really adaptable. You can change certain talents for certain people. You know, Lightning Shield can be good against melee. Grounding Totem good against casters. Counter-Strike good against melee who don't, or casters that can't hit a Counter-Strike totem. So like Shadow Priest, I believe, can't hit a Counter-Strike totem unless they melee it. Or they might be able to Shadow or Paint it, but I could be wrong. Anyway, that's like a poor man's guide to Enhancement. If you guys liked it, go ahead and thumbs up, subscribe, description, bell thing. I'll see you guys later.